The microwave over the stove said 2:17 in the morning when I heard Amanda's Mercedes roll into the driveway. I had been planted at the kitchen table for almost an hour, drinking my third mug of coffee and staring at a pile of credit card bills I had dug out of her dresser, tucked under a velvet box of earrings. At that hour, the whole house felt changed. It was so still it almost seemed like the walls had stopped pretending. Everything felt stripped down and plain, like the place was finally ready to tell me the truth. A second later, I heard her at the front door, jingling keys and trying not to make noise. That effort was pointless. The garage door had already groaned loud enough to wake half the block. Mrs. Parker from next door had probably already pulled her curtain back and started building tomorrow morning's gossip before the sun was even up. "Ryan, why are all the lights on?" She used that careful voice she always pulled out when she wanted to sound relaxed and normal, but missed by a mile. It was the same voice she used every time she came home late and tried to pass it off as another long day at work. "I am in here," I said from the kitchen, and I did not bother smoothing out the sharpness in my tone. She stepped into the doorway still wearing the black dress she had told me was only for some big client meeting. It was one of those dresses that probably cost more than I spent on clothes in half a year. Her lipstick had faded and smeared at the corners, and her hair looked messy, like fingers had been through it over and over. Maybe hers. Maybe not. "Why are you still awake?" she asked. "And why are you drinking coffee in the middle of the night?" She walked over to the cabinet and reached for her favorite mug, the white one with "World's Best Wife" printed across the front in bright red letters. Her mother had wrapped it up and given it to her one Christmas 3 years earlier. At that moment, it looked less like a sweet gift and more like a bad joke. "I am getting ready," I said as I watched her pour coffee. Her hands were moving, but they were not steady. She paused and looked at me. "Getting ready for what?" I raised my eyes and really studied her face. I looked at her the way a man looks at somebody when he suddenly realizes he does not know her at all. That cold feeling started in my chest and settled deep. This was my wife. I had been married to her for 12 years. She was the mother of my son and daughter. And there she stood in our kitchen, feeding me another lie like it was nothing. "I am practicing for when you are gone." The mug slipped right out of her hand. It hit the tile hard and shattered. Coffee splashed across the floor along with broken, white pieces of ceramic. The crack of it bounced around the kitchen, and then everything went dead quiet. Her mouth opened, but when she spoke, her voice came out thin and weak. "What is that supposed to mean?" I pointed at the stack of statements spread out in front of me. "You want to tell me about the charges for Ocean View Beach House? $2,000 for a weekend rental." That caught my attention, because I do not remember you and me taking a romantic little trip anywhere. The color drained out of her face, then came back fast, then drained again. She looked like she might either cry or throw up. "I can explain," she said. "I bet you can," I told her. "You have always been good with words. That is probably part of why everybody at the agency thinks so highly of you." I pushed back my chair and stood up, stepping carefully so I would not grind any of the broken mug into the tile. "But I am done listening to explanations, Amanda. I am done hearing excuses. And I am definitely done being treated like I am too dumb to notice what is right in front of me." She crouched down and started picking up the bigger pieces of the mug. Now her hands were shaking so bad she could barely hold them. One of the sharp edges sliced into her finger. A bead of blood formed and dropped onto the floor, mixing with the spilled coffee. "You do not understand," she said. "This is not what you think." "Then tell me what it is," I said. "Go ahead. Help me out." But she would not look at me. She kept her eyes on the floor and kept gathering pieces of ceramic like that was more important than answering me. After a while she said, "I think you need to get some sleep. We can talk about this tomorrow morning when you have had some rest and you are thinking straight." That almost made me laugh, like I was the one losing touch with reality. "Good night, Amanda," I said. "Sleep good." I walked past her and headed for the stairs. Then I stopped and turned back. "You better put something on that cut," I said. "Would not want you carrying around a scar." Then I left her there, kneeling on the kitchen floor in the middle of broken pieces and spilled coffee and that little drop of blood. The whole picture felt like it meant something bigger than itself, and I think we both knew it. The next morning, I drove to work half awake, buzzing from too much caffeine and almost no sleep. The whole ride over felt blurry, like I was moving through fog even though the weather was clear. Morrison print and copy was not much to look at. The place sat in an old brick mill building on the rough side of downtown Riverton, the kind of building people ignored unless they had business there. But for the last 5 years, that shop had been my safe place. After the company cutbacks at Bennett and Cole Advertising knocked me out of my executive job, Gus Morrison brought me in to run his print shop. It was not fancy. It did not come with a corner office or expense account or company parties with catered shrimp. But it was straight work with decent people, and there was a lot to be said for that. Tony Martinez was already there when I walked in. He stood by the big printer feeding in an order of business cards, moving with the easy rhythm of somebody who had spent years doing the same job. Tony had been at the shop longer than anybody else. He knew every rumor, every feud, every secret affair, every business failure, and every family mess in town. If a person wanted information, Tony could usually get it. If a person wanted silence, they had better ask somebody else. He glanced over at me and frowned. "You look awful, boss." "That obvious?" I asked. "Yeah," he said. "You look like you got hit by a truck and then backed over for good measure." I went over to the old coffee machine in the corner and poured myself another cup. The thing had probably been there since the late 1980s, and the coffee it made tasted just a little better than boiled dirt, but I needed it. "Tony," I said, "you ever been married?" He gave a short laugh. 3 times. That is exactly why I spend so much energy paying attention to other people's trouble. Keeps my mind off my own. Then he took a closer look at me. The joking eased off his face. "What is going on? You and the missus having a rough patch?" I was ready to brush it off. I had already started building some plain answer in my head, something about stress and work and not sleeping enough. But before I could say it, my phone buzzed in my pocket. It was a text from Amanda. "Had to leave early for meetings. We will talk tonight. Love you. Love you." I stared at those words for a second and felt my jaw tighten. Then I slid the phone back in my pocket and looked at Tony. "You know everybody in this town," I said. "You ever seen Amanda somewhere odd? Somewhere she had no business being?" His expression changed right away. All that easy humor dropped off him. "What kind of odd?" "I mean with somebody she should not be with. Somewhere she should not be." The printer hummed beside us. That was the only sound for a few seconds. Finally he said, "I do not like getting in the middle of this stuff, Ryan. But you are asking me straight, so I will answer you straight." I said nothing. I saw her Thursday night down by the marina, at that place called Harbor House. I knew the restaurant. Expensive seafood, dim lights, white tablecloths, and a view of the water that people like to brag about. It was not a place you stumbled into for a quick sandwich after work. She was there with Brent Lawson, Tony said. That name landed hard. Brent Lawson was Amanda's boss. He owned the agency where she worked. Married man. 2 children. Big house up on the bluff with a view of the water. I had met him before at holiday parties and company events. He was one of those polished guys who always looked freshly pressed, like somebody had built him in a showroom. Straight teeth, expensive watch, expensive haircut, expensive smell. A man who never seemed to sweat and never seemed to age. I swallowed and asked, "What exactly did you see?" Tony shifted his weight and looked down for a second, clearly wishing he had kept his mouth shut. "More than what looked right for a work dinner," he said. "Honestly, I figured maybe you knew. When I saw them reaching across the table and holding hands, I figured maybe you two had some kind of understanding worked out." Holding hands. That did something ugly to my stomach. The coffee I had just swallowed turned sour fast. "Thanks," I said, though it came out rough. "I appreciate you telling me." He lifted one shoulder. "Could have been innocent, I guess. Maybe not innocent, but maybe not what it looked like." I shook my head. "Tony, it is fine." But it was not fine. Not even close. I spent the rest of the morning going through the motions. I approved orders. I checked inventory. I answered questions. I signed off on jobs. My body was there, but my head was somewhere else entirely. Piece by piece, I felt the truth settling in. My marriage was not just in trouble. It had probably been dead for a while, and I had either trusted too much or ignored too much to face it. Around lunchtime, Gus Morrison came through the front door carrying his usual paper bag of takeout, and that look he got when he already knew something was wrong. Gus was Tony's cousin, but over the years he had become more than my boss. He was my closest friend. His own divorce from wife number 2 had left him with strong opinions about marriage, women, and the way life could turn on a dime. Before opening the print shop, he had spent nearly 2 decades as a police officer. After that, he picked up private investigation work on the side. That history made him useful in ways that went beyond friendship. "Tony called me," he said without even sitting down. "Said you looked like a man who just got the worst news of his life." "My dog is fine," I said. "It is my wife that is the issue." Gus set his lunch down, poured himself coffee, and lowered his heavy frame into the chair across from my desk. "All right," he said. "Start talking." So I did. I told him everything. I told him about the hidden statements. I told him about Amanda coming home after 2 in the morning. I told him about the beach house charge and how she froze when I brought it up. I told him about Brent Lawson and the restaurant by the marina and what Tony had seen. When I finally finished, Gus sat there in silence for a good long minute, rubbing a thumb across the side of his coffee cup. Then he said, "What do you want to do?" "I want proof," I said. "Not guesses. Not rumors. Not a story from across a restaurant. I want something real." He nodded slowly. "I can help you get that. But before I do, you need to think hard about what happens after. Once you know for sure, you cannot unknow it. Once you have something solid in your hand, there is no stepping back into your old life and pretending none of this happened. Are you prepared for that?" I thought about Amanda on the kitchen floor in the middle of that mess. I thought about 12 years together. I thought about our children sleeping upstairs while our marriage cracked open under the same roof. I thought about the house, the routines, the plans, and all the things I had believed were steady. Then I looked Gus right in the face. "Yeah," I said. "I am ready." He leaned back and gave one slow nod. "All right then," he said. "Let us find out what is really going on." Gus had a whole setup in the back of his truck that was a lot more advanced than I expected. He brought out a digital camera with a long zoom lens, a tiny tracking device about the size of a coin, and a slim recorder he said turned on by sound. It looked so much like a pen that I would have missed what it was if he had not told me. We were parked down the street from my house when he laid everything out between us. "The tracker sticks underneath her car," Gus said. "It has a magnet on it. Once it is in place, it stays put. Battery should last about 2 weeks. The recorder is for private conversations. Purse, office, car, wherever you think she talks freely." I turned the little tracker over in my hand. "This feels like something from one of those spy thrillers." Gus gave a dry smile. "Most of real life is dull compared to the movies. But every once in a while, it lines up almost exactly." Then he looked at me hard. "You certain you want to cross this line?" I stared at my house through the windshield. That place had once meant everything to me. Amanda and I bought it right after she got promoted to senior account executive. We walked through every room talking about paint colors, furniture, and where the kids would play. We talked about birthdays there, holidays there, growing old there. Now, when I looked at it, it did not feel like home anymore. It felt fake, like the front of a building on a movie lot. Like I had been living inside a story somebody else wrote and only just found out. "I am sure," I said. Putting the tracker on her car took less than half a minute. Gus had not been exaggerating. It was almost insulting how easy it was. One quick crouch, one smooth motion, and it was done. I got back in the truck feeling like something important should have happened, but all I felt was emptier. The recorder was different. That part needed timing. I had to wait until Amanda either left the house or got busy enough that she would not notice me moving around her things. I got my opening 2 days later. She told me she was going to the gym after work, and by then I understood that statements like that could mean almost anything except the truth. I waited until her car disappeared at the end of the street, then I went upstairs to our bedroom. Her purse sat on the dresser. It was one of those soft leather bags with a designer label stamped on the side, the kind that cost more than some people paid in rent. I opened it and moved past the makeup case, the cards, the receipts, the little things she carried every day. When I found a spot deep enough to hide the recorder, I stopped for a second and just stood there. That was the moment Gus had warned me about. Up until then, I still had some room in my head to pretend I was only being careful, only checking, only protecting myself. But the second I turned that recorder on, there would be no lying to myself anymore. I would be choosing to hear whatever came next. I pressed the button anyway. The next few days felt strange. Every minute around Amanda seemed loaded now. Every word had weight to it. Every look felt rehearsed. Every smile looked measured out in advance. Even when she said she loved me, it sounded practiced, like a line she had repeated so many times it no longer meant anything. Still, I played my part. I kissed her before work in the morning. I asked how her day went when she got home late. I nodded through the excuses. I let her talk and acted like I believed her. In a way, I was doing exactly what I told her I was doing that night in the kitchen. I was practicing for life after she was gone. The tracker started painting the picture fast. Her car spent time in places that had nothing to do with work or the gym. It showed up at the marina restaurant where Tony had seen her with Brent. It showed up in the back lot of a hotel out on Highway 1. Most of all, It kept circling back to the same place listed on that credit card bill, Ocean View Beach House. After a few days of that, Gus and I decided to follow her ourselves. It happened on a Thursday night. Amanda told me she was meeting her friend Nicole from Human Resources for dinner. According to the tracker, she was nowhere near town. She was 15 miles away, out by the coast, at a beach house sitting by itself with a full view of the Atlantic. When Gus and I got there, he pointed through the windshield. "There is her car," he said. Amanda's Mercedes was parked outside beside a silver Lexus. And unless Nicole suddenly started driving a luxury sedan, I would say that other one belongs to Brent Lawson. We parked on a rise above the property where we could see the house clearly without getting close enough to attract attention. Gus lifted the camera, adjusted the zoom, and all of a sudden the windows looked close enough to reach out and touch. I watched my wife move through the living room with a wine glass in her hand, smiling and laughing at something Brent said. She was wearing the red dress I bought for her on our anniversary the year before. I remembered that dress clearly because she had told me it was too dressy for the dinner I planned at Romano's. Yet there she was wearing it for him. "You getting all this?" I asked. "Every second," Gus said. The camera clicked and clicked. After a moment, he lowered it just enough to glance at me. "Ryan, I am sorry. I mean that." I nodded, but I did not say much. The truth was, what I felt by then was no longer plain shock. That had already burned off. What was left was colder, sharper. My mind had already moved beyond the hurt and into planning. Inside the house, Brent stepped close to Amanda and pulled her in like a man who had never once considered there might be consequences waiting for him. He kissed her slow and easy, with the kind of confidence only a smug man could have. Then the two of them moved toward the back of the house. I turned my head away. "That is enough," I said. "I have seen what I need to see." Gus set the camera down and started the truck. The ride back to town was quiet at first. I sat there staring out the window while my mind worked. I could confront her. I could call a lawyer. I could blow up both families and drag everybody through court. I could let the kids get hurt while Amanda and I fought over custody and money and blame. Or I could do something smarter. "Gus," I said, "what do you know about Brent Lawson's business?" He glanced at me. "Riverton Creative Group. Good-sized agency. A lot of local clients." "Why?" "I am trying to understand the kind of man my wife decided was worth throwing away her family for." Gus kept his eyes on the road, but I saw the look cross his face. "You have got that expression again," he said. "What expression?" "The one you used to get when you were building those ad campaigns back in your corporate days. The one that made every competitor in town nervous. That look that says you are already a few moves ahead." He was right. My head was already turning things over. Brent Lawson thought his money and position protected him. Amanda thought she had set this all up so neatly that she could slide from one life into another without paying for the damage. Neither one of them understood who they were dealing with. "Drop me by the office supply store," I said. Gus frowned. "For what?" "I am going to make sure they both get exactly what they earned." The next morning, I started small. I had done a little homework the night before. Brent's Lexus was always parked in the marked executive space behind the Riverton Creative Group office. The security cameras watched the front entrance and lobby, but whoever designed the system had left the rear lot with almost no coverage. That seemed careless. I poured a bag of sugar into his gas tank and let the air out of 2 tires. I was careful not to do anything that might get somebody hurt. I did not want a wreck. I did not want an ambulance. I wanted inconvenience, expense, frustration. I wanted him standing there in his pressed shirt and polished shoes, furious and helpless. Before I left, I slid a note under his windshield wiper. "Practicing for when you are gone. A friend." By noon, people all over Riverton were already talking about what happened. Of course, Tony was the first one to bring me the news. He came into my office grinning like Christmas had shown up early. "Somebody got to Brent Lawson's car," he said. "Sugar in the tank, flat tires, whole mess. Police are calling it vandalism, but Brent is telling everybody this was personal." I kept my face blank. Any idea who would want to do that to him? Tony snorted. "Could be just about anybody. That man has a reputation. He screws people in business, steps on whoever he has to. And from what I hear, he is no saint in his personal life either." Personal life. That stuck with me. If Tony knew Brent had that kind of reputation, then other people in town probably knew too. Which meant Amanda and Brent were not nearly as secret as they imagined. That afternoon, I got the recorder back out of Amanda's purse. I waited until she was in the shower, then slipped into the bedroom, reached into the purse, and took it out. My hands were steady by then. That part surprised me. A week earlier, I probably would have been shaking. I spent that evening listening. What came through that little recorder changed everything. There were hours of conversations. Amanda talking to her friend Nicole. Amanda talking to Brent. Amanda talking to other people whose voices I did not know. Piece by piece, I sat there with a notepad and built a full picture of the life she had been leading behind my back. The affair had been going on for 8 months. 8 months of lies. Brent had told her he was going to leave his wife when the timing improved. Amanda planned to ask me for a divorce after the holidays because she thought it would be easier on the children that way. The two of them had already looked at apartments together. They had talked through custody plans like my kids were items on a checklist. They had even joked about some wedding in the Caribbean once everything settled down. But the part that dug in deepest came from a conversation Amanda had with Nicole 3 days earlier. Nicole's voice came through small and muffled, but I heard her clearly enough. "Are you sure Ryan does not suspect anything?" Amanda laughed. "He has no clue," she said. "He is so wrapped up in that little print shop, he barely notices whether I am home or not. And anyway, he is not smart enough to figure it out. He never was." I stopped the recording right there and sat in silence for a while. Not smart enough. 12 years together. And that was what she thought of me. That was the moment something inside me settled into place. I was not going to react like some angry fool. I was not going to shout and break things and give her a clean excuse to call me unstable. I was going to outthink her. And then, while I kept listening, I stumbled onto something even bigger than the affair. Brent's own arrogance handed it to me. In several of the recordings, I heard him and Amanda mention the Morrison account and those idiots in city planning. At first, the comments did not add up. I listened again. Then again. I started matching names, places, and timing. Eventually, the pattern came together. Brent's agency was bidding on a major city contract to handle the tourism campaign, worth $500,000. The proposals were supposed to be sealed and confidential. But from what I heard on those recordings, Brent had information about the competing bids that he had no legal way to know. And the most interesting part of all was this. Amanda was the one feeding it to him. Nicole from Human Resources had access to personnel files at several rival agencies, and Nicole's boyfriend worked in the city planning office. Together, they had built a neat little scheme, and I had the proof recorded. I spent the weekend putting everything in order. Audio files, photos from the beach house, credit card statements, tracking records. I copied all of it and mailed packets to 3 places: the Riverton Police Department, the City Ethics Board, and Brent's wife. I left the envelopes unsigned. I did not need my name on any of it. The raid came on a Tuesday morning. I was at the print shop when Gus called. "You need to get over to Riverton Creative Group," he said. "Something serious is happening." When I got there, the lot was full of police cruisers and plain sedans. Investigators were walking out of the building with boxes of files while employees stood around in little clusters, confused and scared. I parked across the street and watched. A few minutes later, Amanda came out in handcuffs. I thought seeing my wife led to a police car might feel satisfying. It did not. Mostly it felt sad. This was how it was ending. Not with lawyers in conference rooms or ugly arguments in the kitchen, but with criminal charges and half the town watching. Then Brent came out too, also in handcuffs. His expensive suit was wrinkled now, and his hair was a mess. He looked like a man watching his whole life cave in around him. Across the street, through my windshield, his eyes found mine. We stared at each other for a second. Then he said something to the detective beside him and pointed my way. I started my truck and pulled off. Let him point. Let him accuse. I had alibis where I needed them, and more important than that, I had not broken the law. I had only made sure the right people got the right information at the right time. That night, Amanda called me from county jail. "Ryan, I need you to come post bail," she said right away. "They are holding me on conspiracy charges, but it is all a misunderstanding. I can explain." "I am sure you can," I said. "You were always good at explanations." "This is not the time for that," she snapped. "I need help." I stood in our kitchen while she talked. I looked at the coffee maker where all of this really started. I looked at the tile where she dropped that mug the night I confronted her. The broken pieces were gone, but I could still picture the stain from the coffee spreading across the floor. "Amanda," I said, "do you remember what I told you that night you dropped your cup?" "What are you talking about?" "Ryan, listen to me. I need bail money." "I told you I was practicing for when you were gone," I said. "Now you are gone." Then I hung up. The story hit the Riverton Register the next morning. Local agency executives arrested in bid rigging investigation. The article had photos of Amanda and Brent being led away in handcuffs, along with details about the case and the evidence that started it. What it did not mention was that they were sleeping together. That part came out later, and it came out loud. I was eating lunch at Murphy's Diner when Brent's wife walked in. Elaine Lawson was a small woman with silver hair, perfect posture, and the kind of calm presence that made people step aside without being told. I had always thought of her as someone who handled family problems behind closed doors. I was wrong. She walked straight over to Brent's table. He was sitting there with his lawyer and two other men in expensive suits, looking like they were trying to build a rescue plan out of thin air. The whole diner went quiet as she stopped in front of him. "Brent," she said, clear enough for every person in the room to hear. "I thought you should know I have filed for divorce. I am also freezing our joint accounts and removing you from the deed to the house." Brent looked up at her like a man who had run out of bad luck to absorb. "Elaine, this is not the place." "Oh, I think it is exactly the place," she said. "I have learned some very interesting things about you and your employee, Mrs. Parker. Things I believe this town should hear." She reached into her purse and pulled out a large envelope. From it, she removed several photographs. The same photographs Gus had taken at the beach house. "These were mailed to me anonymously," she said, holding them up. "They show my husband and Mrs. Parker in a relationship that helped destroy two families." The diner got even quieter, if that was possible. Even the cooks in the back had stopped moving. Brent's face went white. His lawyer leaned in and started whispering fast about statements and defamation. "Mrs. Lawson," the lawyer said, "I strongly advise you not to." "Not to what?" she cut in. "Tell the truth? Show evidence of my husband's affair? That ship has already sailed." Then she looked back at Brent. 23 years of marriage," she said. 23 years, and this is how it ends. You in handcuffs, and me learning about your girlfriend through photographs sent by a stranger." Brent finally found his voice. "Elaine, please. Can we talk about this in private?" "We are far past private," she said. "You made it public the minute you started conducting your affair in a town where everybody knows everybody else's business." She slid the photographs back into the envelope, then turned and looked around the room. "I want everyone here to understand," she said, "that I knew nothing about my husband's business dealings or his personal behavior. I have cooperated fully with the police, and I will keep cooperating." Then she walked out. For several seconds, nobody said a word. Then the whole place came alive at once. People started talking over each other, and the sound rolled through the diner like a wave. I finished my sandwich, left a good tip, and headed out. The performance had been worth the lunch. That afternoon, Detective Lisa Chun came to see me at the print shop. She was small, serious, and direct, with the kind of eyes that missed nothing. "Mr. Parker," she said, "I would like to ask you some questions about your wife's recent activities." "Of course," I said. "Have a seat. Can I get you some coffee?" "No, thank you," she said. "I understand you and your wife have been having marital problems." It was not phrased like a question, so I answered it plainly. "That is right. When did you first learn about her relationship with Brent Lawson?" "About 2 weeks ago. I hired a private investigator to confirm what I suspected." "And once you confirmed it, what did you do?" I looked right at her. "I spoke with a divorce attorney. I also started looking into Brent Lawson's business dealings, and that is when I found irregularities in the city contract bidding process." "What kind of irregularities?" "Conversations suggesting my wife and her coworkers had access to confidential details about competing bids. Once I understood that, I felt obligated to report it." Detective Chun wrote in a small notebook. "You sent anonymous packages to the police, the ethics board, and Mrs. Lawson." "I did." "Why anonymous?" "Because I figured the evidence would be taken more seriously if it came from someone who looked neutral, not from a husband whose wife had cheated on him." She studied me for a moment. "Mr. Parker, did you vandalize Brent Lawson's vehicle on the morning of October 15th? "No, Detective. I did not." "Do you know who did?" "No," I said. "But from what I hear, Brent Lawson has made plenty of enemies in business and outside of it. It could have been anybody." "Anything else?" Detective Chin asked. "Just one thing," I said. "Where was I that morning?" "I was here at work. I got in at 7:30 like always. Tony Martinez can back that up." "We will speak with Mr. Martinez," she said. "Of course." She closed her notebook and stood. "Mr. Parker, I want you to know we take domestic situations seriously. If at any point you feel unsafe or threatened, let us know." "I appreciate that, Detective," I said. "But I am not the one who should be worried." My wife and her boyfriend are the ones facing charges. She gave a short nod. We will be in touch if we need anything further. After she left, I sat in my office thinking it over. They were clearly trying to tie me to what happened to Brent's car, but they had nothing solid. I had made sure of that. More important, they saw me as the betrayed husband, not part of the bigger scheme. That was exactly where I wanted to stand. The custody hearing was set for a Thursday morning in November. Amanda was out on bail by then, but the criminal case was still hanging over her. Her lawyer had apparently told her that wrapping up the divorce fast might help when it came time for sentencing. I hired Diane Walsh, the toughest family lawyer in Riverton. She was a small woman in her 60s who wore pearls and spoke in a calm New England voice, but she had a reputation for tearing apart anybody foolish enough to underestimate her. Your wife is in a very weak position, Diane told me before the hearing. Criminal charges, infidelity, dishonesty. No judge is going to look at that and feel good about joint custody. What about Brent Lawson? I asked. She looked up. What about him? Is he still involved with Amanda? Diane smiled just a little, and I understood how she had earned her reputation. Mr. Lawson has bigger problems now. His wife filed for divorce and included claims of fraud and embezzlement. His business is under federal investigation, and his assets are frozen. I do not think romance is his top priority at the moment. The hearing itself turned out to be brief and dull. Amanda's lawyer argued for joint custody, but even he sounded like he knew it was not going anywhere. Between the affair and the criminal case, the facts were stacked too high against her. Judge Harrison did not have to say much to make clear where he stood. Mrs. Parker, he said, can you explain to the court how your present legal troubles serve the best interests of your children? Amanda stood slowly. She had lost weight since the arrest. Her expensive clothes hung on her now instead of fitting the way they used to. Your Honor, I made mistakes. Serious ones. But I love my children, and I want to be in their lives. That may be true, the judge said, but love by itself is not enough. This court must consider stability, judgment, character, and the ability to provide a proper environment for minor children. In the end, he gave me full custody. Amanda got supervised visitation until her criminal case was resolved. He also ordered child support, even though she was out of work at the time. When we left the courthouse, Amanda hurried after me in the parking lot. Ryan, wait. Please. I stopped and turned. She looked older than 38. Stress had worn her down fast. So had the legal trouble and the collapse of the life she thought she had under control. What do you want, Amanda? I want to explain. I want you to understand why you what? I said, why you cheated. Why you helped commit fraud. Why you lied to me for 8 months. It was not supposed to happen this way. Brent and we did not plan it. It just happened. I almost laughed. It just happened. An 8-month affair just happened. Helping him rig a city contract just happened. Planning a whole new life while lying to my face every day just happened. Tears filled her eyes. I was going to tell you after the holidays. I was going to ask for a divorce. After you moved money around and lined up a new place with your boyfriend? I said, that was real thoughtful. Then she started crying for real, or at least it looked real. A few months earlier, maybe it would have gotten to me. Not then. By then it just felt like one more attempt to manage the situation. I am sorry, she said. I know I hurt you. I know I hurt the kids. But I am still their mother. I am still the woman you married. No, I said quietly. The woman I married would not have done any of this. She has been gone a long time. She wiped at her face. So what happens now? I looked at her standing there beside her car in the cold, finally understanding that choices do not vanish just because you regret them. Now you live with what you chose, I said. The trial, the divorce, the custody ruling. You made all of this. And what about you? She asked. What about us? There is no us, I said. There has not been for a while. I was just the last one to see it. Then I walked away and left her there in the courthouse parking lot. I thought it would feel like a win. It did not. It felt more like closing the door on something that had already been dead for a long time. The criminal case ended in plea deals for both of them. Amanda got 2 years of probation and community service. Brent got 18 months in a minimum security prison. Riverton Creative Group folded soon after, and most of the employees scattered to other agencies. Elaine Lawson divorced Brent and moved to Portland with their children. From what I heard through the usual small-town channels, she got a strong settlement and was happier living near her sister's family. Amanda found work at a small marketing firm in Bangor. It was a long drop from where she had been, but with a record, It was the best she could land. She rented a studio apartment and drove to Riverton every other weekend to see the kids. Our divorce became final in March. I kept the house, the custody arrangement, and most of what we owned. Amanda kept the Mercedes and whatever regrets she had left. The children are doing well. Ben, who is 12, still asks about his mother now and then, but he seems to understand that some things in life do not go back to the way they were. Lily, who is 10, adapted faster. She settled into the new routine better than I expected. I am still at Morrison Print and Copy, though Gus has talked about making me a partner. I am thinking seriously about it. The shop is growing, and somewhere along the way I realized I like building something solid, something honest. Mrs. Parker next door still watches the street like it is her full-time job, but these days most of her reports are about the new family living in Brent's old house. Young couple, twin babies, golden retriever, just regular people trying to live a regular life. Sometimes, late at night when the house is quiet and I cannot sleep, I think back to that moment in the kitchen when Amanda dropped her coffee mug. I still hear the crack of ceramic on tile. I still see the look on her face when I told her I was practicing for when she was gone. Sometimes I wonder whether I could have handled things another way. Whether I should have tried harder to save the marriage instead of preparing to destroy it. Whether there was some cleaner path through betrayal than recorders and trackers and public fallout. Then I remember the recordings. I remember hearing her say I was not smart enough to figure it out. I remember the easy contempt in her voice. I remember the photos from the beach house, the months of lies, and the fact that real remorse only showed up after she got caught. Some things do not come back from that. Some betrayals go too deep. Some are too deliberate, too cold, too complete. And sometimes a person shows you exactly who they are. Once that happens, you cannot make yourself unsee it. Amanda thought I was weak. She thought I was slow, easy to fool, easy to manage. She thought she could keep lying forever and I would never catch on, never push back, never make her answer for any of it. She was wrong. I was not practicing anymore. I was finished.